Looks like okay. JB, the floor is yours.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm JB. I'm the federal lobbyist for the National Society of Professional Surveyors, NSPS. It is, I believe, Monday, March 20th. And can you believe it? Just over a week out from the spring business meeting. And of course, the reason that we're on the session today, you have registered to participate on the NSPS Day on the Hill set for March 29th. So we're really looking forward to that. Appreciate you all taking the time today to join us. We're really looking forward to a very good use of your time, but also to make sure the voice of the professional surveyors is heard loud and clear on Capitol Hill. We're also very excited for a couple other reasons. Number one, we are not going to be discussing virtual anymore. This is going to be in-person Day on the Hill. So let's clear that out. We had to actually go through a lot of our old documents and the PowerPoints from last year, make sure we got all the references to virtual out of our system. So it's great to be back up on the Hill in person. We're really looking forward to that. And with that, I'll also mention that we also have on the call today, obviously Tim, Executive Director for NSPS, but Mark Sargent is the Government Affairs Committee Chair in New Hampshire. And what really got us to get ahead of the schedule or get ahead of the curve this year is that Mark and Tim made a special trip to where I'm located, which is Fairfax City, Virginia. As president of Miller Reynolds Capital Strategies, we are the government affairs representative and registered lobbyist for NSPS. Tim and Mark made a joint meeting, joint visit to our headquarters in December. We took a look post-election. Now that we knew that the Senate was going to stay Democrat and the House was going to flip to Republican, all right, let's, in our crystal ball, which issues did we think would be the most likely to be relevant when the NSPS Day on the Hill occurs on March the 29th of this year? As a result of taking a look at everything that shows up in the NSPS Government Affairs Committee update, which was last posted in October, and we'll have an updated version to share with the board and the rest of the NSPS membership very shortly. We narrowed down all the different issues and priorities to NSPS to 3, and those are the ones that we'll cover today. So with that, I just wanted to again acknowledge the work that Tim is up to as executive director, and Mark, especially his committee, in identifying the issues that we think would make the most sense to bring to Capitol Hill on March the 29th. It's not to say that all the other issues don't matter. It's just the timeliness, the relative nature of those 3 issues we thought to be the most pressing for the late first quarter of this year, now again, March 29th. The goal of the session today, of course, is to walk you through not just the legislative agenda, but the logistics. I took a quick dive into how many NSPS attendees there'll be, how many meetings, et cetera, how many states. Here are the quick facts. We have at least 40 states that will be making these in-person visits. The number of registrants from NSPS, 75, which basically equates to north of 150 Hill visits in person. And we haven't seen these numbers for many, many years. And certainly when we did these events virtually the last few years, we really didn't get anywhere close to 40 states, 75 registrants. So that in itself is a great indication that things are looking up, that a lot of folks can't wait to activate in person for this opportunity to go to Capitol Hill and make sure the surveying profession's voice is heard loud and clear in the halls of Capitol Hill. So with that, let's go ahead and move forward with the first of the 3 issues. Let's see if I can move this just a tad out of the way here. Hopefully this doesn't mess up your all's view of things. But So where we are is this. We have three issues. The first one will look pretty familiar for those who attended the Day on the Hill last year, and that is the Images Act, what's known as the FEMA National Flood Insurance Program, and all the different surveying and mapping reforms that we have as part of the what we call the Improvement of Mapping, Addresses, Geography, Elevations, and Structures Act, known as, again, Images Act. Now, just to put this in context, when President Biden signed into law back in December, the omnibus appropriations bill to keep the government funded through September 30th of 2023 this year, one of the actual extensions, short-term extensions, was the National Flood Insurance Program in FEMA. So what Congress is looking at would be not just to extend NFIP beyond September 30th of this year, but potentially do a 5-year reauthorization of the NFIP. And so not just extending the program, but actually providing opportunity to reform the surveying and mapping efforts. And so with that as the background, let's get into what we're pursuing. So what NSPS has done over the last several years, we have our own version of just a surveying and mapping reform effort bill. The Images Act last Congress, which is the 117th Congress, we had a bipartisan bill. Congressman Gonzalez, a Democrat of Texas, and Congressman Mooney, a Republican from West Virginia. They are both on the House Committee on Financial Services that has jurisdiction over everything related to FEMA, and especially the NFIP program. They introduced a bill, HR 4088, in the House back in 2021. The update is that they're planning to reintroduce the bill this Congress. So this Congress is now the 118th Congress. So just every Congress is a 2-year cycle. So 117th Congress was from 2021 to 2022. The 118th Congress is 2023 to 2024. So they have to reintroduce their bill because it's a new Congress. So that bill could be reintroduced as early as this week. And theoretically, when you go to the Hill, when you visit the Hill on March 29th, we may actually have a new bill number that would replace the HR 4088 number. So that's the first important item. And because we have a commitment from both offices in the House to reintroduce the bill, we are still looking for a Senate sponsor of that House bill. In other words, what we call a Senate companion bill. So the good news is that we're halfway there. We believe a House bill that's going to be reintroduced. We still need a Senate version of that House bill to be introduced. What the bill does is enhances the coordination between FEMA and the U.S. Geological Survey on 3DEP, the 3D elevation program, which is the nationwide LIDAR data program, but also USGS has a stream gauge program. And those two efforts between the USGS leadership on 3DEP and the USGS leadership on stream gauges, those are two areas where we believe FEMA and USGS can be better working together, that coordination can be better enhanced. Another thing the Images Act does is it actually creates a national structure inventory to include parcel and address data. And this has a lot of appeal to folks in the financial services and banking communities for a couple of reasons, one of which is processing claims on the actual damage from a flood or some kind of water catastrophe. And what we found is that when you can actually take the imagery, take the actual structure inventory before the flood hits and compare it with post-disaster imagery, you can do change detection analysis for what kind of structure was there pre-flood, if any, and what was there afterwards. And then from processing, it helps the folks in financial banking community not only identify the level of damage, but also identify fraud or potential fraud in the claims analysis too. So that's where we reached out to a lot of other folks that we typically don't work with, But on this kind of issue, we do work with because they see a major need for the data beyond perhaps what the surveying and mapping community would have a need for. The third item also includes QBS contracting to be utilized for all professional surveying and mapping services. So those are the big three things. There's several other things that the bill does, but those are the three big takeaways, and that's why we're pushing the Images Act. So in the House and the Senate, let me make sure I can, this isn't in your way here in any ways. So in the House and the Senate, the ask is a little bit different. When you go in and meet with a House member or a senator or their staff, you're always going to ask for action. And so on this issue, if you're visiting a House office, the ask in the House is, will you co-sponsor the Images Act? And again, that's because we have a commitment from Mr. Gonzalez and Mooney to work together on reintroducing a bill in the House. So we're not asking House offices to sponsor a bill, we're asking them to co-sponsor the bill. Whereas in the Senate, we are kind of starting from scratch. As a result, it's a different ask in the Senate. Will you sponsor the Images Act? So that's our first of the three issues. That's what we're trying to tackle. There's a need for the bill. There's a need to reintroduce the bill in the House. There's a need to introduce the bill in the Senate. And those are the asks that you'll want to make sure that you ask for. One is different than the other as far as what the House ask is versus the Senate ask. And by all means, if anyone has any questions about this issue or the next two, please raise your hand or use the chat box to ask your question. I believe Tim's going to be moderating the session, so we can stop, we can clarify. If you want me to talk faster, I can talk faster. If you want me to slow down, I can slow down. But just raise your hand if you want me to clarify anything or get into more detail on any of these issues. With that, let's move on to the second issue. Now, this is going to be, of the three issues, this is the new issue. A lot of folks will be very familiar. One of the big ticket items in Congress for the next 2 years, but especially this year, will be the Farm Bill. The last time the House and Senate and the President signed into law Farm Bill is 2018. Therefore, every 4 to 5 years, there's an opportunity to start a scratch and do a new Farm Bill. Well, that Farm Bill from 2018 ends September 30th of this year. Therefore, both the House and the Senate will be working together to produce one version, if you will, of a Farm Bill. Now, they'll start with a House bill and a Senate bill, and then they'll have to, at some point before September 30th, try to reconcile their versions of the bill. So that's the opportunity. That's a legislative vehicle we know has to be enacted into law, extended one way or another. And so that's the opportunity. Now, what the issue is that we are pursuing now dates back to 2 years ago. Quite frankly, dates back to 2009, but we'll get into that in a second. In 2021, President Biden signed into law a massive infrastructure bill, $1.2 trillion bill. About a little over $500 billion of that was for infrastructure itself, at least. And one of the forms of infrastructure in that bill was broadband. There are 3 major broadband agencies at the federal level. A lot of folks have heard about the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. In the Department of Commerce, there's the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, known as NTIA. That's in the Department of Commerce. And then the third one is called the Rural Utilities Service, RUS, which is housed in Department of Agriculture, USDA. So RUS, that's the door that we want to open, because that's the one that's going to be most connected to the Farm Bill and the Secretary of Agriculture. So what we're pursuing in the Farm Bill, make sure I move this out of the way so y'all can read this properly. All right, so what we have here, let's do this a little differently. So Again, the House and the Senate are in the process of drafting the 2023 Farm Bill and have held several listening sessions on ideas to include in the bill. We've heard about this over the last few months. California, Pennsylvania, and Texas have been at least 3 of those listening sessions that, at least on the House side, there have been bipartisan listening sessions to try to hear from a wide variety of voices and stakeholders that have a market in rural communities, no matter what it is related to rural. And so that is an opening for us. I remember, I know Tim Birch is on the line, back in preparation for the 2018 Farm Bill. Tim was in Illinois at the time, right? And Illinois did a version of one of these listening sessions. And Tim took it upon himself to actually attend one of these sessions and discuss the role of the surveying profession in Illinois in front of 5 or 6 members of Congress, bipartisan, including the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, I believe the ranking member of the House Agriculture Committee too. And so there's lineage here. If you show up, if you speak up, if you interject how the surveying profession has a role to play in the Farm Bill, that opens doors for us. And so again, dating back to the 2018 Farm Bill, we're able to win a massive win for NSPS as a result of Tim taking part in that listening session that, again, opened doors for us throughout the next couple of years as the Farm Bill eventually made it across the finish line and enacted into law. Maybe we'll come back to Tim for his point of view on that. Unless, Tim, you want to interject here? You want to mention anything?
No, it was a good thing to be involved. I think it helped raise the awareness of that, we are out there and that we're obviously in the middle of a lot of this stuff that's going on as far as mapping going forward, and how much we overlap with the farming community and agriculture. So no, it was a good opportunity to just raise the awareness from our perspective as well. So if we get a chance, we need to stay out in front of it.
Very good, Tim. And I will say, about 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to spend some quality time with the House committee chairman for the Agriculture Committee. His name is Glenn G.T. Thompson. He represents the middle section of Pennsylvania, where Penn State University is headquartered, main campus, that is. And we had a good conversation. We discussed a couple different things connected to NSPS. And so I know that we continue to be on the radar. And here's what we're trying to do policy-wise. Number one, we have a draft bill. And so what we see is a 2-step process. And I'll get a little bit more into what the bill does. But here's what we want to do. Number one, we have the big legislative vehicle, which is the Farm Bill. Okay. So just about anything that falls under the Department of Agriculture would be in play to impact in the Farm Bill. What we would like to do is to have what we call a standalone bill introduced. We have taken to brand that bill to be what we call the Base Mapping Act. And I'll explain the surety angle to this really briefly. The Broadband Asset Surety Enhancement, BASE, Base Mapping Act. So the reforms we're pursuing, number one, date back to 2009. Since the President Obama had a big stimulus program that was enacted into law in 2009. And as such, that was the first stage of what we now know as the National Broadband Map. And the problem is that we still don't actually have an accurate national broadband map. So that's number one. That's the first problem that we are trying to, number one, articulate as to why we think we still have an incorrect and inaccurate broadband map, and then come up with some solutions, some reforms to the mapping effort to then hopefully get us on the right direction to having a consistent, accurate national broadband map. The second thing, when I mentioned President Biden signed into law that massive infrastructure bill just within the NTIA in the Department of Commerce that had $65 billion set aside for broadband to either reduce or eliminate the digital divide. So it's one thing to actually try to correct the national broadband map, but it's also what can you do with the national broadband map if it's accurate, as far as to identify the best locations around the country to site and permit, whether it's the telecom towers above ground, if you have to dig and put the fiber and cable underground. And that's where the $65 billion, that's where it's going to go, are the state and local projects for broadband build out. So that's what we're trying to identify. Number one, let's correct the national broadband map on one hand, and then have that data leveraged for the state and local projects where that money is going to flow downstream, typically through grants to state and localities to, reduce or eliminate the digital divide. Those are the two issues we're trying to take care of. Now, we can go on forever on why do we not have an accurate national broadband map. In our view, one of the reasons why that's the case is because the surveying profession is yet to be fully utilized and enacted, and not just and the level of sophistication, the accuracy, all the different opportunities to leverage the surveying profession have not been a part of this project and a part of this actual entire broadband mapping effort. We've seen a lot of examples of where the work was done by folks who definitely didn't have a professional background, were not licensed, and go on and on and on about the lack of professionalism in the actual mapping efforts and how that then negatively impacts the infrastructure rollout and build out. So if you go to the third bullet point, the main thing our bill calls for is the utilization of the surveying profession to improve broadband mapping and enhance the deployment of related telecom infrastructure. So when I mentioned we have a two-step process for the Farm Bill, the first step, we need a bill to be introduced in both the House and the Senate that would be a standalone measure, again, what we're calling the Base Mapping Act. That's the first step. The second step is to then have that standalone bill added to the big Farm Bill. And so there's a major opportunity next Wednesday, March 29th, to progress on this. So the immediate ask that we were hoping to do is to make sure that we have the bill introduced in both the House and the Senate. So you'll see here, the ask is the same. If you're visiting the House office, will you sponsor the Base Mapping Act? If it's a Senate visit, will you sponsor the Base Mapping Act? Now, if you really want to get into the weeds, this is really what the bill does, okay? So number one, in the 2018 Farm Bill, I mentioned that because of Tim Burch's outreach efforts and getting in front of the listening sessions, we had some wins. One of the secondary benefits as far as the language that ended up in the 2018 Farm Bill, it's really interesting. Number one, there was specific language in section 6212 of the 2018 Farm Bill. And what that did was it said to the Rural Utility Service, you need to coordinate with NTIA. And then separately, it said, RUS, we need to coordinate with the FCC. What it didn't say was for all three agencies to coordinate together. That is the opening. And because they're the big three broadband agencies, what our bill does is it builds on that language from section 6212 of the 2018 Farm Bill, but then expands it. And it basically says, RUS, it's one thing to coordinate with one of these agencies. It's another thing to actually coordinate at the same time. So consult, coordinate, partner, and utilize specifically on the 3D elevation program. So here's where we see 3DUP coming into play for the purposes of not just having an accurate national broadband map, but for the actual build out of the infrastructure. First off, we've heard over and over and over, we do not have a national broadband map, and therefore we're going to start on what's called the National Broadband Map 2.0. Problem is, they're still going around trying to do the National Broadband Map as if it was 2009 and not leveraging the profession. So what we have specifically is language that, again, it authorizes opportunities for a lot of different data sets and nationwide programs where the work is actually done by a qualified licensed professional surveyor. And in the case of 3DUP, it's very similar. Now, here's two things that we're pursuing. Number one, instead of starting from scratch for a national broadband map, why doesn't the FCC, NTIA, and RUS start with a 90% nationwide 90% nationwide coverage map that's available in USGS under 3DUP? And what the LiDAR data gets you is a national terrain model. That terrain model can then be leveraged by the internet service provider, ISP community, to overlay their coverage maps using the GIS, what they call the fabric, which is basically a GIS-enabled system. With that terrain map, the ISP community overlays their coverage maps. Then you can do a gap analysis. Where is there no coverage? Where is there slow coverage? That's the first way that 3DUP can be leveraged. The second way is with the siting and permitting issue. With the gap analysis, then you can work with the local and state folks on the ground to determine, based on the gap analysis, where does it make the most sense to site and permit the telecom tower above ground, or if you have to dig and put the fiber and cable underground along a roadside or wherever they might put it, median or on an elbow of a road. That's the elevation data that would be crucial for the telecom, the $65 billion going out to state and local projects. So theoretically, that's where a nationwide data set like 3DUP can be best maximized. And again, that data is collected by folks that are licensed. Then there's another way then to make sure that the surveying profession is brought in. And in the bill itself, we have a draft bill. All of this is obviously template language. We don't have it introduced yet. It's going to increase the opportunity for data collection, elevation data, land use, land cover data, critical infrastructure data. We talked about the national structure inventory in the flood insurance bill. Something very similar, a structures data, information on structures, living resources and habitat data, cadastral data, aerial imagery. Point is, there would be a massive opportunity for the surveying profession to be even better leveraged than it is now as part of the national broadband mapping effort. So that's basically what we're trying to do with the bill. Now, I should definitely mention, why is surety even in the actual name of the bill? And we work in a couple different coalitions on Capitol Hill. It's very positive, very helpful for the profession, for NSPS to be engaged in a lot of coalitions. One of the groups that we partnered with on the bill, the draft bill, is a group called the National Association of Surety Bond Producers, NASBP. We have a great rapport, great relationship with their federal lobbyist. We do a lot of work together. And we decided for not just messaging purposes, but also strength in numbers purposes, why not we combine efforts, put together a draft bill? And it just so happened that group visits Capitol Hill the day after we do next week. So the NSPS Day on the Hill is March 29th. And our colleagues in the Surety Bond group will be visiting Capitol Hill on Thursday, March 30th. This is one of their bills. This is one of their issues they're taking to the Hill. So the opportunity, messaging wise, and the combined efforts is to jointly work on a bill together. And then in the process of one day after another, visiting Capitol Hill on the same bill, asking the same ask. And we hope to even make singing the same tune, multiple voices singing the same tune. This amplifies our voice. Both groups are asking for the same. Now, what the bill does for surety, I can't get into all of that, but the important thing is that you don't have to. You just have to be aware of the bill name and the fact that we are working with another group. Of the bill language, 10% of the bill is surety, 90% is surveying and mapping. I think that's the takeaway from the discussion today. It's just a way, again, for the two organizations to work together. We had to put surety into the title of the bill to help brand it, but it really is 90% surveying and mapping related and 10% surety related. It's not going to be something that gets any surveyor into trouble. I've seen the language. It's all about making sure that folks in the small business ISP community have an alternative to letters of credit. And surety is another way for folks to actually bring competition into the ISP coverage community. So I think there's more upside to working with the surety bond producers than there is downside. And that's why I'm very encouraged to see the two groups working together. I just wanted to make sure that if you get asked something about surety, don't feel like you have to answer it. Just say, we are teaming up on the effort to reform how we actually get to a national broadband map that's accurate, and to make sure the infrastructure spending is done in a way that leverages the surveying profession. And that the group that can talk best about surety may be visiting with them the next day, and they can ask that question of them. So I just wanted to briefly cover why there's surety in a bill that we are advocating for. And again, if you want me to clarify that, or if anyone has any questions, please let me know, Tim.
Yeah, two quick questions. Is this bill considered really an appropriations bill?
No, not
yet.
The short answer is no. This is an authorization bill. So what we'd like to do is to have this base mapping act introduced as a standalone authorization bill. The Farm Bill, the 2023 Farm Bill, is an authorization bill. So what we'd like to do is, once the base mapping act is introduced, is to take that bill and add it to the big 2023 Farm Bill. That is the bill that has to basically get passed or extended by September 30th. This is our opportunity to add on specific surveying and mapping reforms to a major program that has significant billions of dollars in infrastructure. That, in my view, and from what I've heard, we're being very much underutilized. This is the opportunity to greater leverage the profession. I forgot to mention Brent Birth. One of the successful provisions in the 2018 Farm Bill that Tim again opened the door for us during the 2018 Farm Bill, there is a provision that called for the authorization of what's known as the Rural Connectivity and Precision Ag Task Force to advise the FCC, to advise the Secretary of Agriculture on how best to extend broadband in rural areas, regardless of the purpose, but to go from 0G to 3G, 3G to 4G, 4G to 5G, exactly. The goal was to, how can you enable the farmer, the rural hospital, the rural school system? How can you extend broadband to rural communities? And before that provision was enacted into law, we got a hold of the folks putting together the Farm Bill. We got a hold of the sponsors of that bill and said, you know what? You're dealing with a mapping issue. Doesn't it make sense to have someone who's a licensed surveyor mapper to actually be a part of that process, to be a part of that task force? They agreed with that. That made it into the 2018 Farm Bill. As a result, several members of Congress wrote to the FCC, wrote to USDA requesting that Brent Byrd be assigned to that task force. Brent, for the last, I believe now 3 years, has been on the working group advising the task force that advises the FCC, advises the Secretary of Agriculture. So we shared the language, we shared the ideas with Brent. We think that this bill will actually strengthen Brent's position on the working group, on the task force, and give him even firmer footing to pursue even more reforms behind the scenes through the regulatory route. So yes, we definitely want to impact the legislation on one hand, but we also want to increase and solidify the standing that Brent has representing the surveying profession when it comes to the FCC and USDA.
Well, the reason I asked about whether this is considered appropriations or not, this versus the Images Act and the one prior, that one is considered an appropriations bill, correct?
Well, no.
Sort of no?
The Images Act is still an authorization bill, and it's actually very similar, actually. It's a good point you bring up, Tim, because the Comprehensive National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, that is a big bill, but it's still an authorization bill. So just like the Farm Bill, the NFIP bill is due September 30th. And so the goal is to have the Images Act, which is an authorization bill, attached to the NFIP bill. And then do the same thing with the Base Mapping Act, get it attached to the Farm Bill. Now, what both bills do, though, in the NFIP bill and the Images Act would actually authorize a higher level of spending on the mapping efforts, the reform efforts. That would then, we'd have a role to play then on the appropriation side. So it's one thing to authorize a level of spending. It's another thing for the appropriators to spend that money. So it's a very good point, Tim. Just wanted to clarify that both the NFIP and the Farm Bill are authorization bills, but ultimately you've got to fund them. And eventually there will be a role for appropriations.
Very good. Couple quick questions on still back on the Farm Bill and the whole the Base Mapping Act.
Yes.
First question is there going to be any conflict between broadband mapping and anything going on with Legato? I mean, should we briefly talk about very briefly talk about Legato?
Well, it's good. Very good question, because we're talking about extending broadband coverage. One of the points that the short answer is no, we don't think there's going to be a conflict there. In fact, when we take a look at where USDOT, when they were brought before Congress, before the Senate Commerce Committee, the survey profession was singled out in congressional testimony when the chairman of the full Senate Commerce Committee asked several witnesses, one of which was from USDOT, and asked, give me an example. What is Legato? What kind of interference? And if it's interference, is it harmful? And can someone please point out to negative consequences to society if there is harmful interference? Because I haven't heard of one. That's what the Senate Commerce Committee chairman asked the witnesses. The first one to speak up was USDOT. And they explained exactly the negative impact that Legato would have on receivers, on precision surveying equipment. Gosh, I'm going to be paying up big time for NSPS PAC. So he brought up he brought up basically, of all the different examples of negative harmful consequences to society, he brought up surveying profession and the fact that precision surveying equipment would be negatively impacted. And he said, you know what, here's an example, highway road program. And you don't want to have harmful interference with a GPS receiver when you're trying to site and locate where an infrastructure project should go. Well, hello, Legato is an infrastructure project. So if anything, these are the reforms that will potentially, whether it's Legato or anyone else, this is going to make their actual broadband build out, the telecom towers or the fiber and cable underground, more accurate. But I think Congress, I think the National Academies of Science has already heard from the profession. They've already finalized a report that said our folks are going to be hit with the negative interference by legato. So you raise a good point. Whoever asked the question, thank you for giving me the opportunity, Tim.
All right. And then the last question that we'll take right now on the base mapping is, with the mapping component, are we anticipating any opposition, any kind of conflicting mapping opportunities with the GIS community? Because we're really talking about the location of this infrastructure with existing mapping and developing mapping. And I really, my personal belief is that in putting this together, we need to move forward with the GIS community. But do you anticipate really having to head off any conversations with the GIS professionals?
It's a good point, good valid question. I'd like to say no, because number one, we acknowledge the GIS fabric, and this is actually the data that's going to make the data in the GIS fabric more accurate. So we'd like to think the GIS community would want to leverage a very accurate data set. We know that a lot of folks are already very much high on USGS 3DEP data. And a lot of folks in the GIS community are leveraging the GIS, the data from 3DEP for the purposes of their own uses. We know that the FGDC, that the National Geospatial Advisory Committee that Gary Thompson has chaired, the NGAC, 3DEP is literally the gold standard in the federal community. And so this is the bill that actually builds on that enhances that. And that would encourage the big three broadband agencies to partner, to collaborate, to consult. So this is best practices, lessons learned. And so we'd like to think the GIS community that's already, we think, firmly engaged in benefiting from 3DEP, this would be a way to expand that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, that's all the questions for now. If you want to keep running with that baton.
Excellent. So keep them coming with the questions. So we'll move on to the third issue. Just like the NFIP issue, for those of you who did the virtual sessions the last couple of years, but certainly last year, this is one of our three issues that we took to the Hill last year. Excuse me. And still very relevant. We wanted to make sure we had an opportunity. Here's what we're pursuing. A sense of the Congress resolution. Where we are with state legislatures, we know that professional licensing is a target for the deregulators, folks that are pursuing the deregulatory efforts in state capitals. While we're pursuing something in Congress, the short answer is the proverbial, let's have a member of Congress literally plant a stake in the ground and to actually go to bat for the surveying profession and simply recognize that this is an issue for our profession. We are not trying to get this sense of the Congress resolution enacted into law. We are just trying to get it introduced. The real value would then have a House bill number or a Senate resolution number that your respective state could then utilize in your talking points the next time, or currently as your state house, the surveying profession's under attack by those folks that are trying to deregulate the profession. That is the issue that we're pursuing. So we'll get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts here. This is, it continues to get, unfortunately, this issue continues to get worse. And so the need for some version of a federal bill continues to grow. And what we're really pursuing here, I'll make sure you can see everything here. I'm just trying to move the, oh, you can see it good. So the current movement to de-license occupation should exempt land surveying among other design professions. There's a need to have the NSPS drafted sense of the Congress resolution introduced in both the House and Senate that highlights the important role licensing of surveyors and other design professionals play in protecting the public health, safety, and welfare. All 50 states and territories license surveyors with licensing of the profession since Wow, 1891. I always gotta double take when I take a look at that year. Surveying is essential, whether for the engineering of infrastructure projects or boundary surveys for home ownership. And the quality and fidelity of the professional responsible for a survey has a significant financial, environmental, safety, and quality of life implication. So what we put together, when we say that it's not just about surveying profession, but other design professionals, we wanted to be somewhat inclusive and bring in folks like the architects, the civil engineers, professional engineers, one or two others into the bill language. So we have, and we haven't changed anything from the resolution that we circulated last year. The issue paper is largely very similar to last year's version. We are starting from scratch though. So we still do not have anyone committed in the House or Senate to introduce either a resolution in the House or Senate. So the ask is the same, regardless of whether you visit a House member or someone in a Senate office. In the House, will you sponsor the NSPS drafted sense of the Congress resolution? And in the Senate, the question is the exact same. So again, y'all know the full impact of the licensure issue in your respective states. We are simply trying to get a resolution introduced in Congress that can then be leveraged as part of the opposition that you face in the state house. That you can point to say, Senator so-and-so, Congressman or Congresswoman so-and-so, Congress has recognized why the surveying profession should be treated differently than a lot of the other professions or occupations or other industries that have been caught up in the delicensing push. So that's our third of the three issues. Any questions on that, Tim?
Nope, all good so far.
Okay.
Is a draft of the resolution ready?
Yes, it is. We'll get into logistics here shortly, and where to find all this information so that folks can prep, not just after they cut off the session today, but we'll talk about much more about not just getting around, but also where to find a lot of this information. Very good. All right, so those are our three issues for March 29th, and we'll kind of speed through. Let me ask you this. I can't see your hands. I can't see all 50. Was it 60? How many folks do we have on the 50? Almost 60 people. That's great.
Yeah, we got 56. Yes.
Okay, so we'll transition now to logistics. Here are the highlights. Again, 70 plus members attending Day on the Hill. That might set a record, Tim and Mark. 150 plus meetings. I think my short count that I sent Trish was about 170, give or take 10 or 15. So there is a small chance we actually might break 200, but at a bare minimum, 150. Those are the combined visits. And then representing at least 40 states. By my count, I think we have 41 states and then the District of Columbia. So 42 entities that are lined up for these visits. All right, go right down the check in the box here, right? So the schedule, congressional directory. I'm happy to report. Now, this is outdated. This is a directory from the 117th Congress. Trish, when you arrive at the hotel next week, Trish will have a fresh set of what we call the congressional directories for the new Congress, 118th Congress. This will have all the returning senators and House members, and then all the freshmen that are now in the 118th Congress. That's going to be another asset you can call upon. We'll have all the issue papers, of course, NSPS staff, and then we'll walk through the Hill visit report form as well, and on the resources page of the Day on the Hill website. Obviously, here's Dan Martinez of Nebraska meeting with Senator Fisher quite a few years ago. But whether you're meeting with a U.S. senator from Nebraska, or you're meeting with your home state senator or a member of Congress, you are the expert. There might be the expert at legislating. You're the expert of the surveying profession. And so the two of you should have a good old conversation. You should not feel intimidated. if this is your first time going, this is a great challenge. This is a great professional challenge, especially if you're going for the first time to Capitol Hill. If you're a veteran, you've done these meetings before, whether in person or a hybrid online, I think your competitive juices will just be turned on once again. And this is going to be very entertaining, but you should definitely go in there unabashed, not afraid, because they're going to be looking to you for your expertise, just like you're going to be looking for their expertise on the best route to move forward with the legislation. And so this is the opportunity for your voice to be heard. You're the constituent, you're a resource, you're a voter. Execution. Typically, this is the breakdown. Whether you meet with a member of Congress or not, we say try to keep it to about 15 minutes. So you take a look at the meeting timeline, plan on 15 minutes for each meeting. Brief introductions. All politics is local. So take 30 seconds, take 60 seconds, introduce yourself, where your office is, where you live. Make it local. Issue discussion, push commitments, gain feedback, invite for tour. We'll touch on a little bit more on all of these. Localize it. How many, are you the sole person in your office? How many other folks work at your office? If you're on site at an infrastructure location, how many folks are employed on that site, on that location? Make it all local. So typically what will happen, whether you're there with a staff member or you're there with a member of Congress, usually the staff will kick it off. A member of Congress might join in the middle and then leave early. And then you'll finish the meeting with the staffer. Now, most of these staffers, and Mark, Tony, I see Tony here, Mark, Tony, Tim, most of these staffers are in their early to mid to late 20s. And they really run Capitol Hill. So do not be offended if you just have a meeting with staff. I think the number one thing you should walk away with, just be adaptable, because even if you are been told that you're meeting with the senator or meeting with the House member, be prepared that they're not going to show up because things happen at the last minute. So I think your bare minimum, just expect to meet with a staffer. And if the House member or the senator shows up, even better. But that's basically what the breakdown is. If you are with the senator, unless you know that senator or House member, like they're your neighbor, like Tony, I think knows this member of Congress because he used to live on the same street as Congressman Mervin from Indiana. Unless you actually know that member of Congress, keep it very formal. But if they say, just call me Frank, or call me Pete, or call me Lisa, keep it very formal. This is like 101 for client relationships and building rapport. Introduce yourself. Again, this is where you make it all local. Come up with brief numbers, have this well prepped. This is your 15 to 30 second elevator pitch, purely to make it local. But also you want to put it in the context that this is part of the NSPS Day on the Hill, and that your state society is obviously a part of NSPS, and that we're working together on these three policies. Whether you speak about all three policies, that's a different story. But this is the NSPS Day on the Hill, but you want to maximize the local flavor, if you will. Points to cover. How does flood insurance, how does licensing, how does broadband impact that district if it's a House member, that state if it's a senator? And again, give specific examples. Offer the legislative solution. Each of the three issues has a legislative solution that we're asking for. And we are not asking for support. We're asking for a commitment. And we were looking through which senators' names could we use as an example here. Now, I'm trying to remember from Maine, there's a Republican and there's an independent. Senator Angus King is an independent from Maine. But I always like to kid around, what better name to have as a senator than King? You can be called both a king and a senator at the same time, right? Well, in the case of any senator, again, you want to keep it very formal. If it's licensing, Senator King, will you sponsor, not will you support, will you sponsor the sense of the Congress resolution on survey and licensure? So no support, don't want their support. We want their action. And the action for each of the three is, will you commit to sponsoring something, something, something? Licensing, NFIP, the Images Act, or the Broadband Base Mapping Act. Again, be flexible. Don't feel slighted if you're meeting with the staff person. Staff is very important. We like to think, the veterans like a Tony, a Tim, and a Mark, they've been to Capitol Hill many, many times over the years. They either met with the member of Congress or staff, or some of them are still around, both the members and the staff. Just think about building rapport, continuing the relationship. Or if this is a freshman office, this is a staffer you've never met before, it's a start. This should never be considered a one-off. This is a relationship. So whether you're continuing a relationship or you're just starting one, just think about it that way. This should never be a one-off, but this is a series of continuing that relationship. Things to avoid. Don't. All right. So all of these don'ts, don't do them. Okay. We could spend forever on this, but the most important one, outside of not getting into a fight with a member of Congress, is the last one. Don't forget to ask for some action. Will you commit? Will you sponsor? All right. And then one of the follow-up items is post-meeting coordination, specifically the meeting report form. We've tried to make this even more user-friendly each year. This time, obviously, instead of hybrid, this is going to be in person. You'll be able to do this from your handheld device, or if you bring your laptop with you, or if you end up going back to the hotel and filling out. This is a must. Regardless of which of the three issues discussed with the office, please fill this out. This is the intel. I cannot be in each of the 150 plus meetings. However, we should have 150 plus report forms. And it's up to me to go through each one of those report forms to find out how many sponsors, how many co-sponsors, how many commitments, because we didn't ask for support, we asked for action. This is where you can actually tally up whether a member of Congress committed on the action or committed not to support. But either way, this is the intelligence that really helps make my job not just easier, but also way more efficient, so that I can better represent you in the nation's capital. One report per office meeting, share views on what was heard and note what action was promised. And even if it wasn't promised, note that. You either agreed to introduce the bill or didn't agree to introduce the bill. And then just decide who will send the information out. For some of you, you might be the only person from that state, but there could be states with 5. In some cases, I think we have one state, Tim, that might have 7 or 8 folks coming. If 7 or 8 of you go to the same meeting, we don't want 7 or 8 report forms. We just need 1 per meeting. So clearly designate someone to take the notes and to follow up and use the Hill report form. Again, continue the relationship. We have a template draft letter, thank you letter. It's already set up, ready to go. We've got it loaded. I'll walk you through where it's located shortly. This is basically where, after you fill in your Hill report form, tailor this template letter to the staffer, to the office, to the senator or House member that you met with. Number one, invite them to visit your office, your work site, your project location. Next time they're home for a recess, invite them to come and visit you one way or another. It's another opportunity for this letter then to be leveraged by the congressional staffer you met with. And then again, remember, a political relationship is a process, not a one-off event. So how do you continue the relationship? Number one, we've got an example here of Wisconsin Congressman Tiffany. That's one thing to meet with them in DC in person. It's quite another thing for here, former member of Congress from Oregon, Kurt Schrader, where the Oregon Society had them come by and do literally a site visit to showcase drones, to showcase LiDAR data collection as part of 3DEP, and where that was happening in Oregon. So it's one thing to meet with a member of Congress. It's another thing then to secure a site visit. So invite them to visit. Town hall meetings include virtual options to make it as easy as possible. But it's never better if you get someone to attend in person. Visit your business office location, solving problems, meet with other voters, part of the workforce, and then again, correspond with key staff. We find that the most effective town halls to go to are the ones where 99% of the folks are complaining. Be the 1% that shows up to compliment the member of Congress. Find one thing that you agree with a member of Congress or senator and compliment them. You will stick out at a town hall. Their staff will come up and ask you for their business card, your business card. That's just another way to continue the relationship. They will remember your face. They'll try to forget everyone that complains, and they'll remember the one person in the crowd that thanked them for doing something and made them look good in front of the entire crowd. So with that, Tim, maybe we have some additional questions.
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones. Is there anything we should bring up anywhere about workforce development?
The short answer for the 3 issues is no.
Okay. Because I agree that it's such a broad issue on so many fronts that it's not that they don't want to hear it from us. It's just that it's going to be noise.
So Tim, another way I'll answer it is none of our 3 issues is specifically labeling workforce development. Now, don't be surprised for some of you if I take you aside at the hotel Tuesday and give you something different. We do have what we call special appointments that we've identified either key committee staff or someone that no one at NSPS is going to visit for any of our 3 issues. But we've identified on workforce development, we've identified at least 2, actually, I think we've got 3, what we call special visits on workforce development. But I'll come to you on those. And we have some other special meetings too. So it's not just workforce development. But for these 3 issues, no, these are our 3 issues for the Hill Day on the Hill.
One more question in the chat. When a staff says, they can't speak for the representative or the congressman or whomever, how should we go about receiving that? Just thank them for their time and do the best they can.
In short, yes. What you still want to pigeonhole them. You say, okay, well, we understand you're not able to speak on behalf of the senator. How soon do you think you can brief the senator and get an answer for us?
Perfect. Yes. Yeah, you're right. Go ahead.
When we have the opportunity to speak with the congresswoman, and can you get us? When can we expect to hear back from you? And then when they say that, whatever the answer is, please write down that date and put it in the Congressional Hill Visit Report form. You might remember it, but again, I'm not going to be able to know any of those details for 150 plus meetings unless you write it down and mark it in the online Hill report form.
Okay, and then we have
great question now. Great question.
Yeah. Okay, then Adrian from California, you got a question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good. I wanted to know if someone could provide some talking points for 1 and 2, because I'm not familiar how to, talk about them. So if anybody has ideas for me on talking points for
absolutely
the 1 and 2 topic, I would appreciate it.
Great, Adrian. Actually, that's a good, maybe Tim, maybe I can transition my screen to the NSPS website and we can kind of let folks know. But Adrian, you bring up a really good point. if y'all can just bear with me, I'm just going to bring up the NSPS website real quick. I have to exit out of here and bring up something here. Where are we? Get that out of the way.
Captain, you still have the comm.
Good. All right. So Adrian, thank you for bringing this up. Now, everyone obviously should recognize, hopefully everyone can see the NSPS main website, right?
Still looking at Canva.
Okay. Have I not? You were screen sharing. Can you see it now?
No, still Canva.
Let's try it. Oh, I see what happened. Sorry. I got to go back in here. Sorry about that. Let me. How about this, Tim? I'm going to, let's see. Where did I do wrong here? So you can see the Canva.
Yep. Canva's still up.
And I want to switch over now. See if that worked. Can you see my?
No, still Canva.
How about this? Can you hit stop share? Or let me stop share. Do you have, Tim, can you bring it up on your screen?
Yes, I can.
I apologize. I've got it on my screen. I just don't know how I.
Yes, one moment. Let me grab the website.
Oh, while you're doing that, can everyone, if everyone has camera view, can everyone open up their camera view? I've finally seen the 50 plus now. If everyone has a chance, can everyone open up their camera so I can see you? Or do a quick poll here. Boy, I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces and then a lot of new ones too. Now, Tim's got the website here. Tim's got this, so we'll have to come back later.
Oh, here, hold on. I'll cancel it for now.
All right. So can everyone, if everyone's put their, has their camera available, I can see about 80% of you now, but if everyone can open up their camera so I can see you, I'm gonna have to do this over a couple pages. Please raise your hand, just one hand, if you've never been to Washington, D.C. before. Keep it high and don't drop it. All right. I'm going through the pages here. So by my count, about 15 of you have never been to Washington, D.C. before. Keep that hand up. Actually, everyone put that hand down. If you've been to Capitol, if you've done the Day on the Hill before, which ones of you have not done this in person before? Please raise your hand. Never done it in person, but you've done the Day on the Hill before, just virtually versus in person. Okay. About 10 of you, it looks like. All right. Well, the good news is this. We got a lot of veterans. We still have a lot of rookies. So this is going to be fun. This is what we're trying to do. And Tim, I'll turn it over to you in a second. But one of the things that we're hoping to do is that for those of you who've this is your first time coming to DC, let alone first time going in person, we have to tier you, right? We're going to tier you as being first time ever versus first time in person. And our goal is to make sure we don't turn you loose to the wolves, okay? But we're going to try to find someone to go with you, especially if you're going by yourself to the Hill for the first time. That will either be me or 2 or 3 other folks on the NSPS staff or part of the Miller Wendell Capital Strategies team. If you are the first time going, but you're part of a larger delegation from your state, I think there's an opportunity to leverage veterans in your state delegation who it may not be the first time going. Yeah, first time Day on the Hill, correct. That's a good question there, I think, from Dan there. But we will do our best. So what we're hoping to do is to maximize the morning portion of your Day on the Hill. So if you have at least 3 meetings and you're going by yourself, you've never been to the Capitol Hill before, and this is the first time you've had a chance to pitch one, let alone all 3 issues to Capitol Hill, we will do our best to assign me or someone else to go with you to your first meeting. Okay? And then by the time of your second or third meeting, hopefully you'll feel a little bit more confident and familiar with the issues and how to cover them. And then to go back to, let's see here. Tim, do you have access to the website right now?
I do. Ready?
Can you go ahead and share that screen, please? And I'll try to walk you through it.
Which one am I? Which site am I going to again?
NSPS homepage.
Okay, let me get to the home. I went to the day on the hill. Hang on.
Yeah, I'd go back to the homepage first.
Yes.
Everyone had to start here, right, to actually register. So let's go to advocacy. Day on the Hill. So this is how everyone registered, right? So what you have are two buttons here, details versus view resources. So hit details first. That just gets you some basic information. Not sure about that, what the picture was supposed to be. Let's go back to resources. We'll have to update that. All right, this is where a lot of your issue papers and a lot of the other assets that you can check in on will be listed. So here are the three issues on the left-hand side: broadband mapping, FEMA NFIP, and licensing. Our goal is to have each of the updated versions of the issue papers available tomorrow. We'll post, that's where you'll find each of the issue papers is on the left-hand side. The recording from today we'll post in the middle there. Right, Tim? I think we'll get it posted, or we'll
Yes.
recorded. So we'll be able to post it under the training session. So if there's someone that you know from your office, from your state, or if you just want to rewatch this on your flight or on your drive, or if you're taking a train, whichever mode of transportation, you want to listen to this again, that's your opportunity to listen in again. And then for the post-meeting follow-up on the far right side, let's go ahead and hit thank you letter, Tim. Not sure what happened there.
We've had some security issues today, so I had to lock some things down.
Okay. The point is, we just posted the template for the thank you letter this morning. So if you already want to go ahead and get your letterhead ready and get March 29th template letter, that's all ready to go. We'll work out the security issues on the website, and you can access that now. So you can just basically send that off literally the same day if you'd like to, or if you wait a day for March 30th, you can send it out the next day. And then the post-meeting report, I believe if you hit post-meeting report, that'll get you into the actual, we've updated all the issues. You can do this from your handheld device. You can do it again from your laptop. If you go back to your hotel, fill it out. Just one of these, it's really quick. It could take you less than 15 minutes, less than 5 minutes. Hopefully less than 15 minutes too.
Yes.
But anyway, less than 5 minutes. It could take you a minute for some of you, especially if you've done these before. So that's where you can find the resources. But the great question about where are my talking points? Well, number one, what I'd recommend you do is to go ahead and print out, or at least highlight each of the three issue papers and just become comfortable. Number one, with the background for each of the three issues, but then the ask is at the bottom of each of the issue papers. And so what I'm waiting on for the final talking points, we have a couple of variables that are happening this week that I just simply don't have final word on. Now, this is the last time online we will do this prep session, but I hope everyone has on their calendar Tuesday, March 28th at 6:30 p.m. That is our last 30-minute prep session where the latest intel about any of these three issues we'll briefly cover. But we are not going to spend an hour like we're doing today, or over an hour now, on these issues. We'll just briefly update the issues on Tuesday, March 28th in person at the hotel at 6:30. So we will reconvene. But again, to address, will we have talking points? Yes, you will have talking points. The holdup is we may have a bill number for the Images Act in the House. We may need to update the talking points with the bill number before we go to print. We'll be printing a lot of the documents very shortly. I think I saw a question about the packets, I think, to take to the Hill. Was that one of the questions, Tim?
Where's the schedule going to be posted for the
schedules.
visits? We're still working on that.
So here's what we're doing. When you registered, each one of you had an opportunity to say, NSPS, will you please take care of my meetings? Or hands off, we'll take care of them ourselves. And so we are acting on how you answered that question on the registration page. So yes, there may be one or two, maybe 2 or 3 states that are doing their own meetings, but everyone else has asked us to do the appointment requests. As a result, whether we're doing the meetings or you're doing the meetings, as far as scheduling them, we're all putting together a comprehensive schedule for everyone that we're tracking. But yes, each state will have their version of a meeting by meeting chronological order for that day when the meetings will occur per state. So yes, you will get an individualized schedule for your entire state. If you're the sole person coming from your state, it'll be pretty easy. If you're from one of the states that has 7 or 8 people coming, could be a little bit more fun getting those logistics out. But we'll take care of all those meetings, putting together the big schedule, and then making sure that each state has their respective individual schedule too. Here's what you're going to basically do when you go up to the Hill. Number one, you got to get to the Hill. There are House side office buildings and there are Senate side office buildings. We are going to do our best. If we're doing the scheduling for it, we're going to do our best to make you stay on the Senate side for back-to-back meetings, because you've got 2 Senate offices. If we can get those confirmed, we're going to try to do this back-to-back. The worst thing that could happen is you'd have to start in the Senate, go over to the House, and come back to the Senate, or vice versa. Start on the House, go to the Senate, and come back. So what we're going to do our best is to make sure that you can do consecutive meetings on the Senate or consecutive meetings on the House, and only cross over from the House to the Senate hopefully once. But there could be some situations where we just can't help it. And you'll have to do a lot of foot traffic. Our rule of thumb is this: for a 30-minute time slot for each meeting, spend 15 minutes in the meeting. So whether you're on the House side or on the Senate side, you got to cut out after 15 minutes to make sure you make it to your next meeting if it's back to back, whether that's on the House side or if you got to literally run over to the Senate, or Senate run over to the House. But again, we're going to try our best to create buffers in your schedule so that you have plenty enough time, not just for lunch, but for traveling back and forth in between meetings. But again, we're going to be at the whim, if you will, of senators and House members and how crazy and sometimes how confused even their schedulers are. But we're going to do our best to make it as efficient of a day as possible. We would encourage you to dress professionally, like this is a client visit that you're meeting for the first time. And that means dress professionally, tie, be light as possible. If you check the weather out and you need to bring an umbrella, do so. If you don't need an umbrella, don't bring it. If you got a light laptop, that's fine. If you got a big bulky computer like me, don't bring it, because you literally might be lugging around 15 to 30 pounds, depending on how big your briefcase is or your computer case is. Those kind of basic things. Dress professionally, travel light, wear a good pair of walking shoes that have some level of formal look to them. That would be my best suggestion. Ed, I see Ed O'Brien's on here. Ed had to do quite a marathon one day. Ed, do you want to talk about your experience walking across bridges to get to your meeting that one year?
Not really. Luckily, it was a nice day, but that was the day the transits had broken down, and we were forced with catching up with a taxi or taking a hike. So luckily, there was a nice path, and over the bridge was a little rough, but I made it back. And it was,
you probably had to get a new pair of shoes next week, didn't you? Didn't you have to get a new pair of shoes next week? Point is, travel professionally, but also travel light, because there could be situations where you just got to be very adaptable, and the less you bring, the better off you are. Now, what you will be bringing per state, let me make sure I get this right. Sorry about that interruption. What you definitely are going to be bringing, you'll have your schedule that you'll be handed Tuesday during our final prep session at 6:30. What we're going to do is we're going to group you by state upon arrival. And when you show up to the prep session at 6:30, you'll be separated by state. And each state will have your schedule, and then you'll have each of the packets for your confirmed meetings. And maybe even those offices, we may not have confirmed a meeting, they'll still have a packet for the unconfirmed offices. We may still try to get you confirmed within that next 24-hour period. And the goal is when you go into the office, again, the assets, yourself, you're the voter, but you're going to have a packet, an NSPS packet. And Pat Beeler says, bring your business card for sure. But in your packet, you're going to have a couple of items. You're going to have your issue papers for the purposes of the sense of the Congress resolution. You'll not only have the issue paper, but you'll have the draft resolution to go with the issue paper. We do not know. We are working to have the Base Mapping Act introduced this week. There is a small chance, but there's a small chance we actually could have a bill number for the Base Mapping Act. But I wouldn't count on it right now. It's probably a lower percentage. There's a really good chance we'll have a bill number for the Images Act for National Flood Insurance Program. Whether we print out a copy of that bill language for either the Base Mapping Act or the Images Act, that's a different story because it's much more paper. And with a bill number, that'll save the hassle of actually printing out the bill language. So there's still some things in flux, but you'll have everything there. The only thing that Pat mentioned, the only thing that you want to put in that we haven't put in there for you is your business card. This is an NSPS event, but certainly all the staff, all the members of Congress and senators want to know how to follow up with you if they have a question or to take you up on your offer and visit you. So definitely leave that business card in the folder, the NSPS folder. So I think Trish has ordered brand new folders. I think, Tim, the brand new NSPS headquarters address will be on those new folders. So this is the new look NSPS folders with all the good intel. So Trish is working very hard on those. But I might pull you aside again. We might have some special meetings on workforce development. There are 2 or 3 other issues that we've identified that there might be 2 or 3 meetings for these other special issues. So if I pull you aside, you've had your warning and you're being recruited, but we'll give you a separate packet. But basically what you do is when you leave that office, the only thing you're leaving behind is the packet. And again, it's 1 packet per meeting. So if your first meeting, I'm not with you, and this is your first time going to the Hill, you're just leaving behind the packet for that office, but you're taking your next 2 to 5 packets with you, however many that you're assigned, because obviously you need to share each packet with each office that you visit. So 1 at a time, 1 packet per meeting, 1 Hill visit report form per meeting. What other questions do we have? It looks like 33 of them. Wow. Which ones did I miss?
No, we're good.
We're good?
Yep, we're good. No, I think that's good for questions. Yes. Unless there's something else comes up now.
I think Adrian's got a hand.
Oh, yes.
So building off of my last comment, for like the veterans, how did they sell the first 2 topics, like specifically to their area or their company? So like, how would you sell the Images Act and the Farm Bill to your senator or rep?
Well, it's really not. It sounds more daunting than it really is. I mean, bottom line is it's how this kicks in and affects our everyday business and how things are in our orbit are going to be affected by these various entities or lack of funding or reduction in mapping, what have you. Really just like JB said, take a look at the talking points, figure out how your viewpoint fits in with everything, and really try to tell that story from your perspective, because that's what you're there to tell, is what's going on as one of their constituents from your perspective on how this is affecting you and the profession that you're working in. So really, just like I said, just come up with a genuine story of how this is part of what our career and our profession is trying to portray, and how they can help.
And I'll just echo Tim's point there. What I would also suggest is interweave our talking points with making it local. So whatever version of the talking points per issue, just interject to make it local. So you'll have to, I mean, I kind of know what the talking points are going to be. Again, just the reason why we haven't published those, because there are some very important details that could be changed over the next few days. That's why we're not sharing them at this point. But once you see, number one, again, I think the best thing to do at this point, starting tomorrow, when we link each of the 3 issue papers, use that. Just do a refresher every day or every other day when you get a chance to, take a look at the main themes and think about, from your perspective, what does it make sense in California, Adrian, to focus on for flood insurance, whether it's in your district or just in general statewide in California. Same thing with broadband mapping. Are there portions of your congressional district that there are complaints from the community that there's no coverage? Or is that something maybe in other parts of California that there's an issue with broadband coverage and access to broadband? Are there elements of the digital divide in your state if it's not in your district? And then the licensing issue is going to be a little bit different from one state to the next. You all know what's going on in your respective state capitals when it comes to licensing. So, but really good question, Adrian.
Thank you.
For maybe some of our veteran folks here, Pat, a Cotton, a Will, Mark Sargent, anyone else that wants to speak up? I don't have everyone here. Dan, I see Dan. I just can't see everyone all at once. Does anyone want to mention what it was like their first time coming up to Capitol Hill in person? And looking back, what you get out of it at that time, what you got out of it at that time versus things that you would do differently now that you've done this a couple of times. Any thoughts, any words of advice?
Mr. Sargent.
Yeah, JB, it's Mark. First, I want to thank everybody for attending today. And I'm having a little hard time speaking because I'm having a hard time breathing today with my pneumonia. But a couple of things I just want to mention real quickly. Just remember, these folks work for you. And as it was mentioned earlier, they look at you as the expert. And so you can educate them on these issues. And they appreciate that very much. What I found in attending, and I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago when we met, that it was probably one of the most rewarding aspects of my career, going out there. And I met with one of our senators, and at least and both of my congresspersons, at least one time. But most of the time I meet, with the younger staff. And what I usually do, a trick I use is I will ask them about themselves right off the bat and how they came to this position and their relationship with my state and with their senator or congressman, and kind of break the ice that way, because everybody loves to talk about themselves. And usually I spend the first, 2-3 minutes letting them talk about themselves. Then I introduce what I came there for. And I found that to be very successful. These issues, the 3 issues that we did pick out, there's 2 reasons we picked them out. First, and always in my mind, it benefits our members. And that's what we're here to do, is to benefit our members. But what we need to emphasize is for the protection of the public health, safety, and welfare. And that's always key to these people. Last thing I'll mention, as JB said before, wear comfortable shoes. I'll tell you, the first time I did this, I wore a nice pair of professional shoes, and my dogs were killing me by the end of the day. You walk for miles. So wear comfortable shoes. And also make sure, you put a business card in your packet, but make sure you have extra business cards, because there's photo ops, and the photo ops are maybe done before you actually have a meeting, and they're going to want a business card so that they actually will send you an autographed photo with you or with your representative. So it's a great time. The last thing, and I said that was going to be the last thing. This will be the last thing. The post meeting that we have is great. And it's almost like the adrenaline rush you have after you finish the workout. We just have a good time, and then you're looking forward to a beer at the end of it. So with that, I'll sign off, and I look forward to seeing everybody in about a week and a half.
Thank you, Mark. I just want to reiterate one of the points that Mark brought up: the pictures. Name me a politician that doesn't like to get a photo taken. They love it. Don't be bashful about asking for a photo with a member of Congress. If you're with a senator or House member, it's still very valuable. If you go outside to where the main entrance is to the actual room where the meeting takes place, typically there's an American flag and potentially a state flag at the entrance to every House or Senate office. So at the very least, just ask the staffer if they can just take a quick photo on the way out at the end of the meeting. And that way, for me, it's like, I would look at it like the gift that keeps on giving, because number one, you can use it for any purpose, whether it's for NSPS can use it, your respective state society can use it, you can use it professionally. And that's one of the takeaways, that you had a picture taken with a senator, you had a picture taken with a woman, you had a picture taken with their respective staff. So please get those pictures taken.
All right, Cotton, you were next.
Yeah, JB, one quick one. Is Wyoming still doing the Wyoming Wednesdays since COVID, or have they canceled? Not back to it?
Haven't inquired. I've lost track of that portion, Cotton. So I'd have to defer to you on any intel about whether they're still doing that or not.
Okay, I can check up on that one.
If they mention that when we do the whatever kind of feedback we receive from the respective office, Cotton, we'll try to relay that to you.
Okay. All right.
I think what we'll find, Cotton, is that there are one or two trains of thought here. With all the downtime and COVID, some offices, there's probably been a lot of turnover for some of the staff, especially the schedulers, and they're going to be starting from scratch. So I think the underlying assumption is that none of the offices will do what they used to do. However, be pleasantly surprised if they continue on that tradition. But I wouldn't make any kind of assumptions at this point. However, I'd like to know, just from a very selfish point of view, I'd like to know which offices actually learn from the Wyomings of the world and actually try to emulate what Wyoming did with those breakfasts. Or other states have done it, of course, not just Wyoming, but it'd be interesting to see if there's actual even more appeal, more opportunities for other states to learn from the Wyomings, if you will.
I'll try to contact Barasso's office here in the next day or so and see what they can tell me, because I'm pretty close friends with them. So
okay,
I'll see what I can find. If I do find something, I'll let you know ahead. I know Matt Morris was interested in attending that, and I believe Montana used to do a similar, but he was going to check to see if they were doing the same thing. So we'll see how the schedules work out and if we can get it done, if they have them, or however it works out. So
I'm thinking it was like 4 years ago, Cotton, you were able to get Senator Barasso to get him to attend our congressional breakfast, and he provided keynote remarks about infrastructure. So that's
I got to be his friend for a couple of days. They were really close. He got kind of my pal.
That was another success story for NSPS. So thank you, Cotton, for making that happen. Senator Barrasso doesn't show up if Cotton doesn't show up.
So he says.
We can't get a member of Congress to show up unless you show up from your respective state. That's the rule of thumb. Make it all local.
Mr. Beeler, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, well, Mark covered a lot of it because, as he indicated, people like you are, and they do want to interact and find out what the constituents are thinking out there in the states. But one of the other things is, I've been to every day on the Hill from when the very first one on up through now. How many more we can go through, but it's a blast. I really enjoy it. But what Mark commented, at the end of the day, when we're all done, if you're on the Senate side, it's very easy to go over to the Dublin and have a Guinness and a shot of Jameson. So that's what I plan on doing.
Thank you, Pat. All right. Anyone else who's a veteran? Anybody? Any other words of wisdom from anyone else that wanted to mention something that hasn't been brought up yet?
Well, JB, I've got some wrap-up notes if nobody else does.
Well, again, thank you all very much for your time. Go ahead, Tim. You got it.
Okay. A couple of things that weren't discussed. Be prepared for anything. Like Ed said, the Metro was down 1 year. There was a snowstorm another year. We had a gyrocopter land in the yard 1 year that shut everything down. And then there was even another year that Mark Zuckerberg was in one of the congressional sides and just it locked everything down. So if the surveyors are coming to Capitol Hill, anything is possible, just so you know. So it's always going to be interesting. Yes, Tuesday night is the pre-event. We'll go back through this information again, hand out the folders, talk about some things. It's also in conjunction with the student competition, basically their kickoff. So we'll be all together on Tuesday night. Wednesday night, when we get back, we're going to be doing it just a little bit differently, simply because of time frames and logistics. That we're going to do our post lobby day wrap up is all going to be part of dinner with the student competition and the young surveyors. What I've twisted JB's arm to really kind of he and I are going to kind of MC these opportunities and these relationships that we've established and these experiences from the day. We want the young surveyors and the students to hear these stories and to know what it's, one of the big reasons why our national and state affiliates work together on advocacy and on promotion, why we do these things. So to be able to share these stories of talking to the different Congress people, to the senators, to their staff, and all the experiences that we're going to have on that Wednesday, we want to be able to hear and share, so the young surveyors and the students hear it as well. Should be a good evening. And then we're gonna stick around that night, try to mix everybody up in the ballroom and do trivia that night with everybody with food and a bar. So really looking forward to having a great outing with everybody. It's going to be great, like Mark said, to have everybody back in person again. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm just pleased that we've got this big of a turnout. So that's it from my end, JB. If there's anything else, I'll let you wrap it up.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Tim. So again, be very adaptable. At the very end, I just literally typed in the chat box my cell number and my email. So obviously recording, hopefully everyone will be able to get it. Don't feel like you gotta be in a rush, but that's my cell number and that's my email address. Please contact me if you need to reach me for any reason at any time between now and Tuesday, March 28th, during March 28th, and certainly the day on the Hill. So with that, I think we're going to just call it finish up with thank you all very much for your time and attention. A little bit longer than we normally would. lots of great questions. And we are just so pumped up and ready for next week. This is going to be a very positive opportunity for everyone involved. And, my job, our job is to make sure that this is truly a good use of your time, that you get value out of this. And again, that your voice is heard as loud and clear in the halls of Congress. So with that, thank you all very much for being a part of today's session, and look forward to seeing everyone in person next week. Safe travels.